My name is Samantha Brooks, I am 28 years old, and I am standing in my penthouse office overlooking Manhattan, staring at a text message that just shattered 8 years of silence. The message reads simply, "Congratulations on Forbes. We are so proud of you. Love, Mom." 8 years. 8 years since my parents declared me dead to them, cut off all contact, and erased me from their lives like I never existed. 8 years of building myself from nothing, of sleeping on floors, of eating ramen noodles for months, of clawing my way to success without a single word of support from the people who brought me into this world. And now that my face is on the cover of Forbes magazine and my company is worth $200 million, suddenly they remember they have a daughter. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe because this story gets much deeper. What would you do if the family who abandoned you suddenly wanted back in when you became successful? Let me tell you exactly how this nightmare began. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, I lived in what looked like the perfect American family from the outside. My father, Dr. Richard Brooks, was a renowned cardiac surgeon at Yale New Haven Hospital, the kind of man who saved lives during the day and attended charity galas at night. My mother, Helen Brooks, was the epitome of high society elegance, organizing fundraisers and serving on museum boards, her perfectly manicured hands never touching anything that might chip her nails. Our colonial mansion sat on 3 acres of manicured lawns, complete with tennis court and swimming pool, the kind of house that screamed success to anyone driving by. But inside those pristine walls lived a hierarchy that would determine the rest of my life. At the top sat my older brother Bradley, 3 years my senior and everything my parents had ever dreamed of in a child. Bradley was tall, handsome, athletic, and brilliant in exactly the ways that mattered to people like my parents. He played varsity lacrosse, maintained a perfect GPA, spoke fluent French, and charmed every adult he met with his practiced smile and rehearsed conversation. Bradley was destined for Harvard Medical School from the moment he could walk, and he embraced that destiny with the enthusiasm of someone who had never known what it felt like to disappoint anyone. Then there was me. From my earliest memories, I was the child who just could not quite measure up. While Bradley excelled effortlessly at everything, I struggled with dyslexia that made reading a daily battle. Where he was smooth and confident, I was awkward and questioning. While he played sports that my parents understood and appreciated, I spent hours tinkering with computers and electronics, taking apart radios and trying to understand how they worked. My parents viewed this curiosity as a phase, something I would grow out of once I focused on more suitable interests for a young lady from a good family. The disappointment in their eyes became a constant companion. During family dinners, conversation revolved around Bradley's achievements while my report cards were met with sighs and suggestions for tutors. When I showed them a computer program I had written at age 14, my father glanced at it for 30 seconds before suggesting I focus more on my French studies. When I tried to explain my interest in technology, my mother would smile tightly and redirect the conversation to more appropriate topics for young ladies, like piano lessons or volunteer work at the hospital auxiliary. The first major betrayal came during my senior year of high school. I had worked incredibly hard to overcome my learning disabilities and earned the position of valedictorian, something that should have made any parent proud. My speech was scheduled for the same day as Bradley's graduation from Harvard Medical School, and I foolishly believed my parents would find a way to attend both events. Instead, they chose Bradley's ceremony without hesitation, leaving me to deliver my speech to an audience that included every family except my own. I stood at that podium, looking out at empty seats where my parents should have been, and felt something inside me begin to harden. When I called to tell them about the speech afterward, my mother's response was casual and dismissive. "Oh, sweetie, I am sure it went wonderfully. We will watch the video later." There was no apology, no acknowledgement that they had missed one of the most important moments of my young life. Bradley's achievement had simply mattered more, and this pattern of conditional love based on achievements they valued would define every interaction we had moving forward. The message was clear: I was worthy of their attention only when I succeeded in ways they understood and approved of, and technology was not one of those ways. By age 20, I had developed what I knew was a revolutionary idea for social media management software that could help small businesses compete with larger corporations online. I had spent 2 years developing a prototype in my dorm room, teaching myself advanced programming languages and user interface design. The software could automate social media posting, analyze engagement patterns, and provide detailed analytics that typically cost thousands of dollars per month from enterprise solutions. I was convinced this could change everything, not just for me, but for countless small business owners who struggled to maintain an online presence. When I graduated from Connecticut College with a degree in computer science, I made the mistake of approaching my parents with my business plan. I had prepared a detailed presentation, complete with market analysis, projected revenues, and testimonials from the beta testing I had conducted with local businesses. I genuinely believed that once they saw the potential, they would understand why I was passionate about technology and perhaps even support my entrepreneurial dreams. The meeting took place in my father's study, a room lined with leather-bound medical journals and framed certificates that spoke to his professional accomplishments. I presented my idea with all the enthusiasm and preparation I could muster, explaining how the software worked, showing them the positive feedback from early users, and outlining my 5-year business plan. When I finished, the silence stretched uncomfortably long before my father finally spoke. "Samantha, this is a lovely hobby, but it is time to focus on your future," he said, his tone the same one he used when explaining terminal diagnoses to patients' families. "Technology is a young man's game, and frankly, it is not a suitable career for someone with your background. You come from a family of professionals. Your grandfather was a judge, your uncle is a senator, and your brother is following in my footsteps in medicine. This computer business is unstable and inappropriate for a Brooks." My mother nodded in agreement, her pearl necklace catching the light from the crystal chandelier above us. "Darling, you have always been creative, and we appreciate that about you. But creativity should be channeled into something respectable. We have spoken with the admissions committee at Yale Medical School, and with your grades and our connections, you could start in the fall. Medicine is a noble profession where you could actually help people instead of playing with these gadgets." The dismissal was complete and devastating. They had not listened to a single word I said about the potential impact of my software or the legitimate business opportunity it represented. Instead, they had reduced 2 years of intensive work to playing with gadgets and dismissed my dreams as nothing more than a phase to be outgrown. The ultimatum was clear: medical school or lose their financial support entirely. I spent the next several months in a strange limbo, officially preparing for medical school applications while secretly continuing to develop my software. I found mentors in the tech community who understood what I was trying to accomplish, brilliant engineers and entrepreneurs who saw the potential in my work and encouraged me to pursue it. These clandestine meetings felt like acts of rebellion, and in many ways, they were. I was choosing my own path over the one my family had mapped out for me, and that choice would soon have consequences I could never have anticipated. The discovery came when Bradley found emails on my laptop during a family gathering. Instead of confronting me privately, he immediately took the information to our parents, framing his betrayal as concern for my well-being. "Mom, Dad, I think Samantha is making a serious mistake," he announced during Sunday dinner, his voice heavy with false concern. "She is still pursuing this technology nonsense instead of focusing on medical school. I found evidence that she has been meeting with these startup people behind your backs. I am worried she is going to throw away her future for some fantasy about becoming an entrepreneur." The confrontation that followed was explosive. My parents felt deceived and betrayed, unable to understand why I would continue pursuing something they had explicitly forbidden. My attempts to explain the legitimacy of my work fell on deaf ears, and the conversation quickly devolved into accusations and ultimatums. Bradley sat silently through most of it, occasionally nodding in support of our parents' position, playing the role of the concerned older brother while systematically destroying any chance I had of pursuing my dreams with family support. When I turned 21 and officially chose technology over medical school, my parents' response was swift and nuclear. The conversation that changed everything took place in the formal living room of our family home, a space typically reserved for entertaining important guests and conducting serious family business. The Persian rugs and antique furniture that had seemed elegant throughout my childhood now felt oppressive and judgmental, like silent witnesses to my family's ultimate rejection. If you walk out that door to pursue this ridiculous technology fantasy, you are no longer our daughter, my father announced, his surgeon's hand steady as he poured himself a scotch despite the early hour. We have invested 21 years in raising you properly, providing you with every advantage, and this is how you repay us? By throwing away everything we have built for some pipe dream about computers? My mother sat rigidly in her favorite wingback chair, her face a mask of controlled disappointment. We simply cannot support this decision, Samantha. The Brooks family has a reputation to maintain in this community. What will people think when they learn our daughter has chosen to waste her education on this technology nonsense? We have already told our friends you were accepted to medical school. How do you expect us to explain this embarrassment? The formal disownment process was handled with the same clinical efficiency my father brought to his surgical practice. Within a week, I received a certified letter from the family attorney informing me that I was being removed from all trust funds, the family will, and any financial accounts that bore my name. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and mahogany, old money, and established power, and I sat across from a man who had known me since childhood as he calmly explained how my parents were severing every financial connection between us. Your parents want you to understand that this decision is final, the attorney explained, his voice professionally neutral despite the personal nature of the proceedings. They feel that supporting your current path would be enabling behavior that goes against everything they believe is appropriate for their daughter. The trust fund established for your education will remain frozen until such time as you pursue a career they deem suitable, specifically medical school or law school. The extended family's reaction was swift and coordinated, clearly orchestrated by my parents to ensure my complete isolation. Aunts and uncles who had sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts for 21 years suddenly stopped acknowledging my existence. Cousins who had been playmates and confidants began treating me like a stranger at family gatherings. The message was clear: choosing my own path meant choosing to be alone. Bradley's betrayal during this period was perhaps the most devastating of all. Rather than supporting his sister during the most difficult time of her life, he actively participated in my ostracism. At the family Christmas gathering that year, he stood before our extended family and delivered what amounted to a public denunciation of my choices. Samantha has chosen to pursue interests that are not in line with our family's values, he announced, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone our father used in professional settings. While we all hope she will eventually come to her senses, we cannot support decisions that bring embarrassment to the Brooks name. The final confrontation took place on Christmas Eve, traditionally a time of family unity and celebration in our household. I had arrived hoping for some kind of reconciliation, still believing that family bonds might ultimately prove stronger than professional disappointments. Instead, I found myself facing a united front of relatives who had clearly been prepared for this moment. "You are no longer welcome in this house," my father declared, his words carrying the finality of a death sentence. "You have chosen your path, and we have chosen ours. The daughter we raised would never have made the choices you are making. That daughter is dead to us now." My mother nodded silently, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her resolve never wavered. Even Bradley remained silent, his earlier expressions of concern replaced by cold acceptance of my banishment. I walked out of that house on Christmas Eve knowing I would never return as a member of the family. The 8 years of silence that followed were not accidental or gradual, they were deliberate and complete, a wall of indifference that my parents built around their lives to pretend I had never existed. The transition from privileged daughter to completely independent adult happened overnight, and nothing in my sheltered upbringing had prepared me for the brutal reality of survival without a safety net. My first apartment was a studio in Hartford that measured barely 400 square feet, with thin walls that transmitted every sound from neighboring units and a radiator that clanged like a broken engine throughout the winter months. The rent consumed most of my income from a part-time job at a computer repair shop, leaving me with barely enough money for food and utilities. Those early years were a masterclass in humility and resilience that my privileged childhood had never provided. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously, repairing computers during the day, waiting tables at a diner during evening shifts, and doing freelance web design late into the night. My hands, which had never known manual labor beyond typing on keyboards, developed calluses from carrying heavy trays and cleaning equipment. My body, accustomed to regular meals and adequate sleep, learned to function on coffee, determination, and whatever food I could afford from the diner's leftover specials. The loneliness was perhaps the most difficult aspect of those early years. Having grown up in a family where every major decision was discussed and debated, I now faced every challenge completely alone. There were nights when I sat in my tiny apartment, eating instant noodles and wondering if my parents were right about my choices being foolish and unrealistic. The silence from my family was complete and devastating. Birthdays passed without acknowledgement, holidays came and went without a single phone call, and major life events occurred in complete isolation. My first serious attempt at launching a startup came during my second year of independence. I had managed to save enough money to rent a small office space and hire 2 part-time developers to help build my social media management platform. For 6 months, we worked 18-hour days, surviving on pizza and the shared belief that we were building something revolutionary. The software was genuinely innovative, combining artificial intelligence with user-friendly interfaces in ways that larger companies had not yet explored. The betrayal came from someone I had trusted completely. Marcus Thompson was my business partner and lead developer, a charismatic programmer I had met at a technology meetup who seemed to share my vision for democratizing social media tools. We had worked side by side for months, sharing everything from code repositories to late-night strategy sessions about the future of our company. I believed we were building something together, that his commitment to our shared vision was as strong as my own. The discovery of Marcus's deception came accidentally, through a former colleague who mentioned seeing our proprietary algorithms being demonstrated by a competing company at a trade show. When I investigated, I learned that Marcus had been secretly copying our code and selling it to TechFlow Solutions, a larger company that specialized in acquiring and repackaging startup innovations. Not only had he stolen months of our collective work, but he had also signed a non-compete agreement that prevented me from pursuing similar projects for 2 years. The legal battle that followed consumed what little savings I had accumulated and ultimately proved futile. TechFlow Solutions had deeper pockets and more experienced attorneys, while I was representing myself with borrowed law books and determination. The court ruled that since Marcus had been a co-owner of the company, he had the right to sell his portion of the intellectual property, regardless of the ethical implications of his deception. I lost everything. The software, the office space, the dream of immediate success, and what felt like my last chance to prove my parents wrong about technology being a viable career path. The health crisis that followed was both physical and emotional. Months of overwork, poor nutrition, and chronic stress culminated in a collapse that landed me in the emergency room with exhaustion and severe dehydration. As I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by the same antiseptic smells that reminded me of my father's world, I realized how completely alone I had become. There was no family to call, no emergency contact who would care about my well-being, no support system to help me through the recovery process. It was during this lowest point that I met Jake Chen, a fellow entrepreneur who was visiting a friend in the same hospital. Jake was recovering from his own startup failure, a food delivery app that had burned through investor funding without achieving sustainable growth. We struck up a conversation in the hospital cafeteria, 2 broken dreamers sharing stories of ambition and disappointment over terrible coffee and vending machine sandwiches. Jake became the first real friend I had made since leaving my family, someone who understood the unique challenges of entrepreneurship and the crushing weight of failure. Unlike the fair-weather relationships I had cultivated in my privileged youth, this friendship was forged in mutual struggle and genuine understanding. Jake had also been rejected by his family for pursuing unconventional career paths, though his immigrant parents had different expectations and cultural pressures than my Connecticut elite upbringing. Together, we learned the most valuable lesson of those difficult years. Resilience is not about avoiding failure, but about developing the strength to recover from it repeatedly. We spent countless hours analyzing our mistakes, studying successful companies, and slowly rebuilding our confidence in our abilities. Jake introduced me to a community of entrepreneurs who had faced similar setbacks, and for the first time since leaving home, I felt like I belonged somewhere. The survival period taught me skills that my privileged upbringing never could have provided. I learned to negotiate with landlords, stretch grocery budgets, fix my own plumbing, and most importantly, depend entirely on my own resources and judgment. These years of struggle created a foundation of self-reliance that would prove invaluable when success finally arrived, though at the time they felt like nothing more than endless endurance tests designed to break my spirit. By age 25, the combination of hard-earned experience and refined technical skills finally culminated in a breakthrough that would change everything. The artificial intelligence software I developed during this period was genuinely revolutionary, combining machine learning algorithms with intuitive user interfaces in ways that made advanced data analysis accessible to small and medium-sized businesses. Unlike my earlier attempts, this software solved real problems for real people, automating complex marketing tasks that previously required expensive consultants or specialized knowledge. The development process took 18 months of intensive work, often coding 16 hours per day while surviving on freelance income from web design projects. I had learned from my previous failures and maintained complete control over the intellectual property, working alone rather than risking another partnership betrayal. The software could analyze customer behavior patterns, predict market trends, and automatically optimize marketing campaigns with accuracy that rivaled much larger and more expensive enterprise solutions. When Tech Global Industries approached me with an acquisition offer of $2 million, it felt surreal after years of financial struggle. The meeting took place in their Manhattan headquarters, a gleaming tower that represented everything I had been working toward. The executives were impressed not just with the software itself, but with the market research and customer validation I had conducted independently. For the first time since leaving my family, I felt like my choices were being vindicated by objective success. The acquisition provided both financial security and industry credibility that opened doors I had never imagined. Technology magazines began featuring articles about my work, and I was invited to speak at conferences about artificial intelligence and small business automation. The validation was intoxicating after years of doubt and criticism from my family, but it also attracted attention I had not anticipated. Bradley's attempt to reconnect began subtly, with a casual email that arrived 3 weeks after the Tech Global acquisition was announced in industry publications. "Hey Samantha, I saw the news about your company sale. Congratulations on your success. I always knew you were destined for great things. Would love to catch up sometime and hear about your journey." The message was carefully crafted to sound supportive while completely ignoring 8 years of silence and his role in my family's rejection. When I did not respond to his initial overture, Bradley escalated his approach with a phone call that caught me off guard during a busy afternoon at my new consulting office. His voice carried the same confident tone I remembered from our childhood, but now it was tinged with something that sounded almost like respect. "Samantha, I know things have been complicated between our family for a while, but I want you to know that I have been following your success from a distance. I am genuinely proud of what you have accomplished, and I think it is time we had a real conversation about healing some old wounds." The manipulation in his approach became clear during our eventual meeting at a neutral coffee shop in downtown Hartford. Bradley had done his research, knowing exactly how much the acquisition was worth and what kind of media attention I was receiving. He positioned himself as someone who had always believed in my potential, conveniently rewriting history to remove his role in my family's rejection. "I know Mom and Dad were hard on you about the career thing, but you have to understand they were just worried about your future. Now that you have proven yourself, I think they would be open to reconnecting." What I discovered through mutual acquaintances was far more disturbing than Bradley's false support. He had been actively monitoring my progress for years, using his connections in the medical and business communities to gather information about my professional development. This surveillance was not driven by brotherly concern, but by a calculating assessment of when my success might become valuable to the family's reputation and financial interests. The most revealing conversation came when Bradley suggested he could serve as an intermediary between me and our parents, helping to smooth over past misunderstandings and facilitate a reconciliation. His proposed role as family representative became clear when he mentioned potential investment opportunities and business partnerships that could benefit from the Brooks family's established connections and reputation in Connecticut society. I realized that Bradley was not interested in genuine reconciliation or family healing. He was positioning himself to capitalize on my success while maintaining plausible deniability about his previous betrayals. His approach was sophisticated and manipulative, designed to make me feel grateful for his interest while obscuring his true motivations. The brother I had once looked up to had revealed himself to be every bit as calculating and self-interested as our parents. My rejection of his manipulation tactics was swift and definitive. "Bradley, I appreciate your congratulations, but I am not interested in reconnecting with our family through intermediaries or business arrangements. If Mom and Dad want a relationship with me, they can reach out directly and acknowledge what happened 8 years ago. I do not need your protection or representation in any family matters." The conversation ended with Bradley's mask slipping slightly, revealing frustration that his carefully planned approach had been unsuccessful. "You always were too stubborn for your own good, Samantha. I am trying to help you here, but you are making this more complicated than it needs to be. Family relationships require compromise and forgiveness, something you might want to consider before you burn these bridges permanently." It was during this period that I met Sarah Martinez, a seasoned entrepreneur who had successfully exited 3 companies and now worked as an advisor to emerging technology businesses. Sarah had experienced similar family dynamics during her own rise to success and immediately recognized the patterns of manipulation I was describing. Families often become interested in reconciliation precisely when it becomes financially or socially advantageous for them, she warned during one of our mentoring sessions. Real love and support do not wait for magazine covers to materialize. Sarah became my second crucial ally, providing guidance not just on business strategy but on managing the complex emotions that come with family rejection and subsequent success. Her perspective was invaluable because she had successfully navigated similar challenges and could offer practical advice based on experience rather than theory. Under her mentorship, I began to understand that my family's renewed interest was not about love or genuine reconciliation, but about association with my success and the opportunities it might provide them. The 2 years following the Tech Global acquisition became a whirlwind of expansion and innovation that transformed my small consulting practice into a legitimate technology empire. Using the acquisition funds as seed money, I founded Brooks AI Solutions and assembled a team of brilliant engineers and data scientists who shared my vision for democratizing artificial intelligence tools. Our second-generation software platform was exponentially more sophisticated than anything I had built previously, incorporating advanced machine learning algorithms that could adapt to individual business needs in real time. The company's growth trajectory was unprecedented in the Connecticut technology scene. Within 18 months, we had grown from a team of 5 people working in a converted warehouse to over 60 employees occupying 3 floors of a renovated office building in downtown Hartford. Our client base expanded from local small businesses to Fortune 500 companies seeking innovative solutions for customer relationship management and predictive analytics. The revenue growth was equally impressive, jumping from $2 million in our first year to over $15 million in our second year of operation. Media attention intensified as our success became impossible to ignore, with features in Wired magazine, TechCrunch, and the Wall Street Journal highlighting both the innovative technology and the compelling personal story of a young entrepreneur who had built everything from scratch. The articles invariably mentioned my Connecticut background and the irony of building a successful technology company in a state better known for insurance companies and hedge funds than startup innovation. It was through these media appearances that my parents began receiving inquiries from friends and colleagues about their successful daughter, conversations that apparently prompted considerable discussion within my family about how to position themselves relative to my growing reputation. According to sources within our extended family network, these discussions became increasingly frequent and urgent as my profile continued to rise within business and technology circles. The first family member to reach out was my cousin Jennifer, Bradley's younger sister by 2 years, who had always been the most diplomatic member of our extended family. Her approach was more subtle than Bradley's direct manipulation, beginning with a seemingly innocent Instagram message congratulating me on a recent speaking engagement at a technology conference. "Samantha, I saw your presentation online and was so impressed by how articulate and confident you have become. I have always admired your determination, and it is wonderful to see you achieving such success." Jennifer's follow-up messages gradually revealed her true purpose, which was to serve as a scout for the broader family's reconciliation efforts. She carefully probed about my openness to family contact while positioning herself as someone who had always supported my choices, despite never having contacted me during 8 years of family silence. Her messages became increasingly frequent and personal, sharing updates about family members and testing my reactions to information about my parents' activities and health. What I learned through private investigation was that my family had been conducting extensive research into my business operations and financial status, using their professional networks to gather information about Brooks AI Solutions' valuation, growth prospects, and potential acquisition opportunities. Uncle Robert, who worked in private equity, had been particularly active in these intelligence-gathering efforts, reaching out to contacts in the venture capital community to assess my company's investment potential. The family's coordination became apparent when Uncle Robert contacted me directly with what he characterized as a family investment opportunity. His proposal was sophisticated and professionally presented, offering to leverage the Brooks family's established relationships and reputation to help scale my business more rapidly. "Samantha, we have been following your remarkable success with great interest and pride. The Brooks family has always been about supporting excellence, and we would love to explore ways to help you take your company to the next level through our network of investors and strategic partners." Robert's pitch included detailed market analysis and growth projections that could only have been compiled with insider knowledge of my business operations, suggesting that their research had been far more extensive than casual family interest would explain. He proposed a complex investment structure that would have given family members significant equity stakes in my company while providing them with board positions and operational influence that seemed disproportionate to their actual contributions. The most disturbing aspect of these family overtures was their coordinated nature and strategic timing. Each family member who reached out seemed to have been briefed on specific talking points and approaches, suggesting that my parents were orchestrating these contacts rather than allowing genuine individual relationships to develop naturally. The pattern became predictable: initial congratulations, expressions of pride and support, historical revisionism about past conflicts, and eventually specific requests for business involvement or financial opportunities. My response to these manipulation attempts was to strengthen my boundaries and build stronger relationships with my chosen family of friends, mentors, and business partners. Jake Chen had become not just a friend but a trusted business advisor whose company was developing complementary software that integrated beautifully with our AI platform. Sarah Martinez continued serving as a mentor and board member, providing wisdom and guidance that helped me navigate both business challenges and family manipulation attempts. The most valuable lesson from this period was learning to distinguish between genuine relationships and transactional interactions. The family members reaching out were interested in association with my success, not in understanding my journey or healing past wounds. Their approaches invariably included elements of personal gain or reflected credit, while my chosen family celebrated my achievements without seeking anything in return except continued friendship and mutual support. As my company approached $50 million in valuation and began attracting acquisition interest from major technology corporations, I knew that family pressure would only intensify. The success I had worked so hard to achieve was becoming a magnet for people who had rejected me when I needed support most, and I was determined to protect both my business and my emotional well-being from their renewed attempts at manipulation and control. The Forbes 30 Under 30 recognition arrived on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, with coffee in my corner office overlooking the Hartford skyline and a calendar packed with strategic planning meetings for our next product launch. My assistant knocked on the door with an expression of barely contained excitement, holding her phone with a Forbes article displayed on the screen. Samantha, you need to see this immediately. You made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list for enterprise technology, and they featured your story as one of the top profiles this year. Reading the article felt surreal after years of building my company in relative obscurity within the Connecticut business community. The journalist had done extensive research, documenting not just my current success but the journey from family rejection to industry recognition that had brought me to this moment. The piece highlighted Brooks' AI solutions' innovative technology, our rapid growth trajectory, and our unique position as one of the few AI companies founded and led by a woman under 30. Most significantly, the article mentioned my estranged relationship with her prominent Connecticut family as part of the personal story that made my professional achievements more compelling. The company's valuation had reached $200 million according to our most recent investor discussions, making me one of the youngest tech entrepreneurs in New England to achieve that milestone. The Forbes recognition would undoubtedly accelerate acquisition interest from major technology corporations and increase media attention exponentially. After 8 years of building something from nothing, I finally had the external validation that proved my career choices had been sound despite my family's rejection and predictions of failure. My mother's text message arrived less than 4 hours after the Forbes article was published online, suggesting that my family had been monitoring my professional progress more closely than I had imagined. The message was brief but loaded with implications. Congratulations on Forbes. We are so proud of you. Love, Mom. 8 years of complete silence, and this was how she chose to break it, with a text message that acknowledged my achievement while claiming pride and love that had been conspicuously absent during my struggles. My father's response came within the hour, a phone call that I allowed to go to voicemail rather than engaging in direct conversation before I had time to process the emotional implications. His message was characteristically formal and measured. Samantha, your mother and I saw the Forbes recognition and wanted to extend our congratulations on your remarkable achievements. We would very much like to take you to dinner this weekend to celebrate your success properly. Please call when you have an opportunity to discuss arrangements. Bradley's approach was the most manipulative, combining false nostalgia with historical revisionism in a phone call that I did take, partly out of curiosity about how he would frame 8 years of family silence. Samantha, I just got off the phone with Mom and Dad, and we are all so incredibly proud of what you have accomplished. I know I have not been the best brother over the years, but I want you to know that I have been defending your choices to the family whenever your name came up in conversation. I always knew you were destined for something special, and seeing you on Forbes just confirms what I have been saying all along. The lie was so blatant and complete that it took my breath away. Bradley was claiming to have defended choices that he had actively opposed and reported to our parents, positioning himself as a supportive brother during years when he had maintained the same complete silence as the rest of the family. His version of history erased his role in my ostracism and painted him as a secret ally who had been working behind the scenes for reconciliation. What became clear through conversations with extended family members was that my parents had been planning this approach for months, waiting for a sufficiently high-profile achievement that would make association with my success socially and financially advantageous. They had been monitoring my company's growth through business publications and industry contacts, timing their outreach to coincide with maximum media attention and potential business opportunities. The coordination extended beyond my immediate family to include aunts, uncles, and cousins who suddenly remembered my existence with an enthusiasm that was directly proportional to my Forbes recognition. Uncle Robert's follow-up call included specific references to investment opportunities and business partnerships that could benefit from reuniting the Brooks family around my success. Cousin Jennifer's messages became more frequent and personal, sharing family photos and updates designed to evoke nostalgia for relationships that had been severed by their own choices 8 years earlier. The most revealing aspect of these renewed contact attempts was their consistent focus on public recognition rather than private relationship building. Every family member who reached out mentioned the Forbes article specifically, and several suggested public reconciliation events that would generate positive publicity for the entire family. The implication was clear: they wanted to be associated with my success story, not necessarily to rebuild genuine relationships with the person I had become during 8 years of independence. The emotional manipulation was sophisticated and multi-layered, combining expressions of pride and love with subtle guilt about the pain my absence had caused other family members. My mother's follow-up messages included updates about my grandmother's declining health and suggestions that family reconciliation would mean a great deal to elderly relatives who missed having the whole family together. These emotional appeals were calculated to exploit my sense of responsibility and compassion while avoiding any acknowledgement of the circumstances that had caused the family separation. My response to this coordinated family ambush was to take time for careful consideration rather than reacting immediately to the emotional intensity of their renewed contact. Sarah Martinez had warned me that success often triggers exactly this kind of family response, and her advice was to evaluate their motivations carefully before making any decisions about reconciliation. Ask yourself whether they are interested in the person you have become or the success you have achieved, she suggested. Genuine love and support do not wait for magazine covers to materialize. The decision I faced was whether to engage with their reconciliation attempts or maintain the boundaries I had established during 8 years of building my life without family support. The Forbes recognition had given me everything I had worked toward professionally, but it had also created new challenges in managing relationships with people who had rejected me when I needed them most but now wanted to benefit from my success. After 2 weeks of increasing pressure from family members, I made the decision to meet with my parents and Bradley at our childhood home in Greenwich, but on my own terms and with my own agenda. The meeting was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon, the same day of the week when family gatherings had been mandatory during my childhood, but now I was attending as a successful adult who owed them nothing and needed nothing from them in return. I arrived in my Tesla Model S, a symbol of the technology industry they had once dismissed as unsuitable for their daughter. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, with the same manicured landscaping and imposing colonial architecture that had intimidated me as a child. But walking up that familiar driveway as a Forbes-recognized entrepreneur felt entirely different from the countless times I had approached that door seeking approval and acceptance from people who viewed my dreams as embarrassments to the family name. This time, I was the one with power and leverage, and they were the ones seeking something from me. My parents greeted me in the formal living room with carefully rehearsed warmth that felt as artificial as it was transparent. My mother had clearly taken extra care with her appearance, wearing the pearl necklace and cashmere sweater that represented her vision of Connecticut elegance, while my father wore his customary weekend uniform of pressed khakis and polo shirt that suggested casual authority. Bradley sat in his familiar position near the fireplace, his posture confident but his eyes revealing nervousness about how this conversation might unfold. The attempt to rewrite history began immediately and systematically, with each family member contributing to a narrative that minimized their role in my 8-year ostracism while maximizing their supposed support for my eventual success. "Samantha, we want you to know how proud we are of everything you have accomplished," my mother began, her voice carrying the same tone she used for charity fundraising speeches. "We have always believed in your potential, even when we disagreed about the best path forward for your career." My father's contribution to this historical revisionism was even more audacious, suggesting that their rejection and withdrawal of financial support had been calculated tough love designed to strengthen my character and independence. Looking back, I think our approach may have seemed harsh, but we wanted you to succeed on your own merits rather than relying on family advantages. Your achievements are entirely your own, and that makes us even more proud of the remarkable woman you have become. Bradley's version of events was the most offensive, portraying himself as a secret advocate who had been working behind the scenes to convince our parents to reconcile with me throughout the 8 years of silence. "Samantha, I want you to know that I have been telling Mom and Dad for years that they were making a mistake by not supporting your choices. I always knew you had the talent and determination to succeed in technology, and I have been defending your decisions whenever family conversations turned to your career path." The lies were so comprehensive and shameless that I realized they genuinely believed I would accept their revised version of history rather than challenging them with the truth about what had actually happened. They seemed to expect gratitude for their renewed interest and willingness to claim pride in achievements they had actively opposed and tried to prevent. My response was methodical and devastating, delivered with the same calm professionalism I used in board meetings when presenting unfavorable market analysis to investors. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today, but I need to address some significant discrepancies between your current statements and what actually happened 8 years ago. I have documentation of our interactions during that period, including the certified letter from your attorney removing me from family financial accounts and the recording I made of our final conversation when you declared me dead to the family. The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable, broken only by the antique grandfather clock that had marked time in that room throughout my childhood. None of them had expected me to have concrete evidence of their previous behavior, and the realization that I had been documenting their treatment created visible discomfort. I also want to address Bradley's claim about defending my choices during these 8 years. I have been in contact with several family friends and extended relatives who confirm that no such defense ever occurred, and that you actively participated in the narrative that my career choices were embarrassing to the family. Uncle Robert's business proposal became the final piece of evidence that their renewed interest was financially rather than emotionally motivated. Uncle Robert contacted me 3 weeks ago with an investment proposal that included detailed financial analysis of my company that could only have been compiled through extensive research into my business operations. This suggests that the family has been monitoring my professional progress and financial status for some time, waiting for an appropriate opportunity to approach me for business rather than personal reasons. The emotional manipulation tactics that followed were predictable but pathetic, with my mother producing tears and expressions of regret that felt rehearsed and calculated. "Samantha, we made mistakes, and we are sorry for the pain we caused you. But we are still your family, and families should forgive each other and move forward together. We love you and want you back in our lives, not because of your success, but because you are our daughter." My final offer was designed to test the sincerity of their stated desire for genuine reconciliation rather than association with my success. If you truly want a relationship with me based on love rather than social or financial advantage, I am willing to consider that possibility. However, it would require a public acknowledgement of how you treated me 8 years ago, including a formal apology published in the Greenwich Time explaining why you cut off contact with your daughter and what you have learned from that experience. The reaction was immediate and revealing, with all 3 of them rejecting the idea of public accountability for their previous behavior. My father was particularly direct in his refusal. "We cannot possibly make our private family matters public in that way. It would be damaging to our reputation and inappropriate for people in our position. Surely you can understand that some things should remain within the family." The irony was perfect and complete. They were unwilling to accept public responsibility for their treatment of me, but they were eager to accept public credit for my achievements. They wanted association with my success story without acknowledgement of their role in making that success necessary through their rejection and abandonment. I left that house for the final time with complete clarity about their motivations and my own boundaries. They had proven that their renewed interest was entirely transactional, motivated by social and financial opportunities rather than genuine love or regret about lost relationships. The family that had declared me dead to them 8 years ago remained dead to me, and no amount of success would change that fundamental reality. The aftermath of that final confrontation brought a sense of liberation that I had not anticipated, like finally setting down a heavy burden I had been carrying unconsciously for 8 years. My parents' refusal to acknowledge their treatment publicly confirmed what I had suspected about their motivations, and their reaction freed me from any lingering obligation to consider reconciliation based on guilt or family loyalty. They had chosen their reputation over genuine relationship repair, just as they had chosen social expectations over supporting their daughter 8 years earlier. The decision to speak publicly about my family experience was not made lightly, but it felt necessary both for my own healing and for other young entrepreneurs who might be facing similar family rejection for choosing unconventional paths. I accepted an invitation to be interviewed by TechCrunch about the personal journey behind my professional success, and the resulting article became one of their most shared pieces about entrepreneurship and family dynamics. The response from the entrepreneurial community was overwhelming and supportive, with hundreds of messages from founders who had experienced similar family rejection for choosing startup careers over traditional professional paths. Many shared stories of parents who had dismissed technology as unstable or inappropriate, only to become interested when financial success materialized years later. The solidarity and understanding from this community provided validation that my experience was neither unique nor abnormal within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Using my platform and resources to establish the Brooks Foundation for Young Entrepreneurs became one of the most meaningful aspects of achieving financial success. The foundation provides scholarships and mentorship programs specifically for young people who have been rejected or unsupported by their families for choosing entrepreneurial careers. Working with these scholarship recipients reminded me why the struggle had been worthwhile and provided purpose beyond personal achievement. The Foundation's first annual conference brought together over 200 young entrepreneurs who had faced family rejection, creating a community of support that I wished had existed during my own difficult early years. Hearing their stories reinforced my understanding that family support is not a prerequisite for entrepreneurial success, though it makes the journey significantly more challenging when absent. My personal life also flourished as I learned to build relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than conditional approval. Meeting James Wilson at a technology conference in Boston felt different from any previous relationship because it occurred when I was completely comfortable with my own identity and achievements. James was a software engineer at a renewable energy company who appreciated my work without being intimidated by my success, and who had built his own career through determination rather than family advantages. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, based on shared values and complementary goals rather than romantic desperation or need for validation. James understood the entrepreneurial lifestyle and supported my work without seeking to benefit from my success or change my priorities. For the first time in my adult life, I experienced unconditional love and support from someone who chose to be in my life rather than being obligated by family relationships. The chosen family I had built with Jake, Sarah, James, and my foundation community provided everything that blood relationships typically offer. Emotional support during difficult times, celebration during achievements, honest feedback about important decisions, and unconditional acceptance regardless of success or failure. These relationships were stronger and more reliable than family bonds because they were built on mutual choice and shared values rather than genetic obligation and social expectations. When my parents and Bradley continued attempting contact through intermediaries and social media, their persistence only reinforced the wisdom of maintaining boundaries. Each attempted contact followed the same pattern: acknowledgement of my continued success, expression of family pride, and subtle suggestions for business opportunities or public reconciliation that would benefit their reputation. Their inability to offer genuine accountability or acknowledge their previous behavior confirmed that they remained fundamentally unchanged despite my achievements. The phone calls from family members became easier to ignore as my confidence in my chosen path solidified, and eventually they decreased in frequency as my parents apparently accepted that their daughter was permanently beyond their influence. The silence that had once felt like punishment now felt like protection, shielding me from people who had proven incapable of offering genuine love without conditions attached. Jake and Sarah served as family witnesses at my wedding to James, a small ceremony focused on commitment and celebration rather than elaborate display. The absence of blood relatives felt natural rather than tragic, surrounded as we were by people who had chosen to love and support us through all stages of our relationship. The chosen family we celebrated with had earned their place at our table through years of friendship and mutual support. As I write this story now, Brooks AI Solutions has been acquired by Microsoft for $800 million, making me one of the youngest female entrepreneurs to achieve that level of exit success. The acquisition provided not just financial security but validation for the technology vision I had pursued despite family opposition and industry skepticism. More importantly, it created resources for expanding the foundation's work and supporting even more young entrepreneurs facing family rejection. The final lesson from this journey is that family is defined by love, support, and mutual respect rather than genetic relationships or shared surnames. The people who celebrated my early achievements without expecting anything in return proved to be my real family, while the people who shared my DNA but rejected my dreams proved to be strangers whose approval was neither necessary nor valuable. Thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever faced a situation where family members only showed interest in reconnecting after you achieved success? How did you handle family rejection when pursuing your dreams? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family rejection and building success on your own terms. Remember to share this with anyone who might be facing similar family challenges in their entrepreneurial journey. Your chosen family is waiting for you, and your success is valid regardless of who chooses to acknowledge it. Keep building your dreams, and never let family rejection define your worth or limit your potential.